Hello, my name is Jared. I am also known as J-Rod of the Crypto Profit Bot team. Wanted to give a little status update and kind of where we're at and what's going on. So initially the plan was to make a whole series of videos to back this product up and really get people to understand what the vision is and what it's supposed to do, and then get into the nuts and bolts of how to actually do it. We thought we would have time for that. Turns out we didn't. A guy named Crypto Crow posted a video proclaiming success, which it is. It's a very good product. And to be honest, the core product, Profit Trailer, says a lot for that as well. Yeah, so it gained a lot of interest. We got completely inundated with orders, and we spent days just not sleeping and manually processing things that we thought we would have time to automate. We've since done that. Nibaru has done an excellent job of all the back-end work. Thank you, Nibaru. So now we have a little time to breathe, and we wanted to start adding on some more. So first and foremost, I want to say thank you to everybody who's purchased the product, either one, through us. We hope that this is the start of a long series of profit taking for you. So I think it's my job to kind of start digging into a little bit more. The wikis are very, very well written, both of them. All the information you can seek, that you are seeking, is already there. But I also understand that people tend to like to watch videos. They like to consume their media in different ways. So I think our first mission is going to be essentially just videofying the wiki, if you will. There's already people putting settings out. Gnome has put out some pretty good ones. Crow has his own. And those are starting points. Eventually, we'll probably release our own as well. We want to make sure they're fully tested, and we feel like that no matter what, you're going to get something out of them. But we're going to implore that you learn more and tailor these tools to your own risk aversion strategies and what you're trying to do, because there's really not one setting that's going to be good for absolutely everybody. We can come up with some very milk toast vanilla ones that are a good base, but I really want you to explore these tools and to learn more. So it'll be a whole series. I'm going to start out just kind of line by line going through everything. And once we have the building blocks, we're going to go back and maybe tackle categories. What's an indicator? How does it work? What's DCA? How does that work? And then there's the other issue of all of these things kind of being interrelated. So you tweak one knob, you're going to affect 3 different things. And it's not really intuitive for everybody yet. It will be, hopefully, when I'm done with it. But that's kind of where we're at. So anyway, I think we're going to go ahead and get started and leave some comments. Let me know what you think. And hopefully we're good to go. All right, thanks. All right, so let's get started with the easy stuff first. All right, so we've got the hostsettings.json file. In here, there's some various configs. You've got your pairs location. Now, these are important. I left both templates here, again, covered in the wiki, but you can see if you've got a Windows machine, that's what you're going to look for. You're looking for these double slashes, and that'll make sure your pathing stays legit. If you're on a Mac or Linux, it's going to look more like this, your working directory, and you're pointing to the trading file in your Profit Trailer setup. So in case you didn't know, you do need both pieces of software. The Profit Trailer feeder modifies Profit Trailer, and it needs to know where those files are to modify. You can set a host name. It says, that's the name that's used on Telegram messages. If you don't set it up, don't worry about it, but, make it something cool. Your license key. This is the license key you will receive from your reseller. Currently, that's us. You will get an email, and it'll say, PT feeder license. That goes here. Once you get that, you're going to take that license and talk to a Telegram bot, and that may change in the future. We're probably shifting away from Telegram, but right now, probably for the immediate future, you're going to go to this bot, you give it that license, you manage your own API keys. So you have a license key, and then you have API keys that are with the exchange. So that's how that works. You manage all that yourself. We never see API keys. We don't need to. Server URL is the same as it would be for Profit Trailer. There is no GUI yet. There will be. So that's where that is. So you can leave that as default. Doesn't really matter. The market condition check in minutes. It says right there, it's how often to check for changes. For Binance, keep this to 4 or more. So, if you're getting those bands, if the exchanges are locking you down, that's what you'll change to make those market calls a little less frequent. I mean, it's in our best interest to have them as frequent as possible, but the exchanges, these bots do eat up a ton of data, so you gotta be mindful of that. The calculate trailing values. Now, I went over that in another video. We'll go into that a little more in depth probably later on, but that is the profit trailer feature that allows it to automatically adjust your trailing to match the charts that it's looking at. You can do that manually, or you can let the feeder figure that out for you and constantly adjust that trail to parameters that should get you more profit or better buys, right? I mean, whichever way you want to look at it. The use min buy balance percentage. So this is where it's going to set your min buy balance in the other config to either be a percentage or be an absolute value. And by absolute, I mean if it's 3, it's 3 Bitcoin or 3 of your base pair. For most people, that's Bitcoin right now. If you set the percentage, then 3, the same number, also now becomes a percentage. So 3 in the other config would be 3% of your existing balance. The Telegram bot ID and chat ID, those again, pretty self-explanatory. If you decide to set up Telegram in the wiki, it explains all of that. We can probably go through that later too. But you'll put the IDs in there so Profit Trailer Feeder knows who to talk to get those messages back to you. And then you've got some debugging. You probably don't need to mess with that unless you're with support and we're telling you, hey, go change this to debugging so we can figure out some more information. So that's it. Let's go ahead and we'll move over to the app settings. All right, so this is the meat of Profit Trailer Feeder. The appsettings.json file, this is where most of the logic starts from. So we're going to go through this section by section, line by line, and hopefully you can get a better understanding of what's going on. So from the overall perspective, this first section is called the general section. So this is your base. When I'm talking with you in support, when I say what's your base, I'm talking about general because it starts here and then all of your offsets apply. So we'll go over that too. So within the general section, there are lots of variables. These are currently commented with the variable in Profit Trailer that Profit Trailer Feeder is mapped to. So I guess you could have used the exact same variables, but I think it's better this way because we know which one we're talking about when we're discussing variables. But we still have to know what maps to what. Okay, so in this case, base currency is Bitcoin. That can be anything you want. It could be ETH, it could be Monero, it could be USDT. I hope you're not using that. It's evil. Don't hold USDT. No, but whatever your base is, you can put it in there. Your buy strategy is currently low BB for low Bollinger Band. There's lots of strategies. We'll go over that in a whole other section. For now, we don't care about it. We just know that that's where your strategy goes. The buy value variable is at 15. That is the trigger for the strategy to enter in. So if you're using low BB, this would buy at 15 in percent. Again, don't worry about that now. We'll go over the strategies in a strategy section. Okay, but that's the trigger. Every strategy has a trigger event to try either get in right away or get in and start looking for trailing and trying to see if it can get in at a better spot. Cost is essentially the amount of Bitcoin you're going to use, or your cost of your base to use to get into a position. This could be an absolute variable or absolute number, or it can be a percentage. It depends on what it was set in host settings. So in this case, if my host settings are use max cost percentage, that means this is a percentage. So 1 isn't 1, it's 1%. If it's not, if it's set to false on the other side, that's an absolute, which means it would use 1 of your base, 1 ETH, 1 Bitcoin, 1 USDT. DCA enabled. Now you don't have to DCA. You can just have it try to enter in and just hold. A lot of people use DCA because it does a pretty good job of fixing bad entries, but that's where you would set it. We'll go into some of that later. But right now, it's basically saying if it's -3, what it's saying is don't put the purchased coin into DCA yet until it's dropped 3% from the entry. Buy it, get it, wait. It might just sell. If it doesn't, it drops 3%, throw it in the DCA queue and apply the DCA values for the market that we're in. We'll get to that later. It's important. DCA max buy spread. So that's showing what you're supposed to do if there is too much gap in the order book. Let's see what the wiki says about that. Yeah, max spread between the lowest ask and the highest bid to allow a new buy order. Most likely there's a pump and dump. So when that buy ask spread widens in the chart in the market, it signifies there's not enough agreement on what price should be, which means the coin is probably dumping. And so you can set this to just ignore it for a little bit and wait for that agreement to come a little closer, which also might indicate that it's ready to stabilize a little bit and then let you possibly rise. But if it's really big, it's either pumping or dumping. And, technically, I guess you could miss out on a major pump if you're in DCA mode the same way. And so that's why it's saying that 3 is really aggressive, because it's saying that you're willing to trade when the gap is 3% or smaller. 1 is conservative, meaning it has to be 1% or smaller. So there's that. DCA max buy times. Same kind of thing. It's a protection mechanism. It's saying, look, limit the amount of times you're allowed to DCA a coin. Remember, it's martingale, so it doubles every time. So it's a factor of 5. That's a lot. So you need to tell it, hey, just chill out. You've gotten to 5 and stop. And you can configure those in your DCA levels as well for what percentage that needs to be. Excuse me. Where are we at? DCA, max cost, balance. Okay. The min buy balance is saying exactly how much money you need to have to do the DCAs. So we can look at that in the wiki as well. DCA min buy balance. Maybe. Yeah. So only buy coins if the buy cost will not let your balance go below the specified amount. So this is a threshold. This is saying, no matter what happens, keep this much money. This examples in absolute terms. The one we were just looking at is in percent. So yeah, in this case, it's saying, just keep 20% of my money. Let me just figure that out later. Don't spend it all. The DCA sell trigger. This is the trigger that it's going to look for to begin to sell, to begin the trailing. So if you're in DCA and the price has risen to at least 0.6% above of your averaged cost, not your initial, your averaged cost, it will then kick in and start looking for the trail with whatever window you've set. The sell strategy is where you put the strategy for how to sell. Remember, this is its own contained thing, DCA is. Gain is pretty popular. You can use others if you want. Gain is popular, I think, because of how simple it is. It's easy to get. It's easy to chart. So in this case, it's 6% of just gain, just the amount above your entry. DCA sell value is the level that it wants to sell at. So in this case, you've got a trigger at 0.6, but it won't sell until it's at least 0.75. Some people set those the same. You can set it as a bigger gap if you want. It just depends on what you're trying to do. I think most of mine I set them the same, but in this case, basically just know those two different things. One is a trigger condition. The other is a limiting condition. So it's saying, start looking, but you need to get to at least here, or don't sell. The DCA trailing buy. So that is the trailing parameter. So let's talk a second about trailing. So again, when a trigger is hit, the profit trailer itself will start looking for more profit, and it does this with a definable window. Let's go look and see what the wiki, I think he retyped it. I think it's called, trailing story. So this is in a story form what it's trying to do. So it's saying, look, the coin rises to 1%, that's the trigger. So gain at 1%, trigger, 20.25% trail. So it hits it, it says, I'm watching, what are you going to do? And if it rises even farther, in this case, the example is 1.5%, the bot's still watching and saying, well, you haven't dropped yet, what's going on? So the coin drops to 1.35. Now, the difference between 1.5 and 1.35 is only 0.15, which is lower than the trailing window, which means it's going to continue to watch. If it drops below that, it'll try to sell. But in this case, the example shows it goes to 6%. The bot's still watching. It drops to 5.74. Now we've dropped more than our trailing value, this. Okay, this value is the same as this value. Okay, if it drops by more than that sliding window that you defined, it will then attempt to sell. If there's a bid or if there's an ask on the order book that matches what you're trying to do, it'll fill it. So that's pretty cool. So it tries to adapt itself to what's on the books as opposed to what you set in your settings, if that makes any sense. There's there's the trailing buy, so that's when it's trying to do the DCA, because you can trail on the buy side and you can trail on the sell side. I just explained the sell side, sorry. Logic's the same, it's just flipped. Okay, so DCA trailing profit, same thing. You can set those to different values. You may want to be greedier on the buy or greedier on the sell or whatever. Excluded pairs. These are ignored by the bot. Now, people use that for different stuff. Some people use it just for pairs they don't like. You can use it for pairs that are going to be delisted. Most exchanges have some kind of a notification that'll tell you when something's going to be delisted. A delisted coin is highly volatile. You can make money on those too, but typically people just go, I'm out. In the future, it would be nice to have something to where we could put in coins that were just recently listed or about to be listed, because the trading pattern on those is, again, usually too volatile to want to have a bot do. Sometimes they start out really high and just peter out. Sometimes they do all this craziness and go even higher. It's hard to tell. There's no history, and sometimes exchanges list coins at a very high value to let the market figure it out. So you don't really want to be trading those automatically right away. The max buy spread. So that would be not DCA. That's the same as the spread we talked about earlier, but that is the spread for your strategy entry. 1% being kind of conservative. Trailing buy, trailing profit. Again, we kind of just went through that. It's now, these are applying to your normal strategy entries. Your normal, not your DCA. DCA happens after you've bought. This is, if it's max, it's beginning. Min buy balance, same thing. This is the amount of money to keep in reserve. In this case, it's 50% of your balance. Min buy price. Okay, so that's to essentially not buy shit coins. If the price resolution on the coin is not this or bigger, don't buy it. You can set that to whatever you want, just like everything else. But that kind of keeps you out of. I think the logic there is if it's a Doge, if it's a 2 Satoshi coin, it's just hard to trade. Those don't trade very well, so you probably want to stay out of those too. It can't hurt to go buy a few. Sprinkle your dust around, and you never know, they might spike. But for our purposes, we try to stay out of them. Min buy volume. Again, this is kind of a limiter. So if the coin doesn't do at least this much volume in I believe a 24-hour period, don't trade it, right? Because you got to have liquidity. You can't trade something that only has 2 Bitcoin of volume. You can, but it's tough. You're not going to get those that liquidity you need to get in and out of a trade. Remember, most of these bots are configured to scalp. They're continuing to suck off the foam and the froth of the markets. Some of the best returns I've seen have actually been on low volume coins, but those bags also last forever. So it depends on your strategy. We'll go into all that later, but that's what that piece is for. Okay, all min profit. Where was that? There it is. Min profit is all min profit. That relates to Bollinger Band strategy itself. And what this is it makes sure that you're always in profit. And I don't have the charts pulled up now, but Bollinger Bands kind of spread out. And then as a price can drop, and these bands kind of flow with the price, and just because you're at a certain Bollinger Band level in your strategy doesn't mean you're above your price. So you have to have a check in place that says, hey, I'm hitting my high BB or my low BB value. Well, are you really in profit or not? And that's what this is for. So that is gain based. So it's saying, look, be at least 0.55% above your in gain before you'll consider selling. All right, so the min trailing buy, it says the minimum of the trailing buy after offsets can be. So again, it's more of a restriction to make sure that your offsets don't go stupid. Okay, so excuse me. In this case, you can set minimums so that 0.01%, 0.01%, just to make sure that your offsets stay sane, because you don't really know if. Without a calculator, we don't have the tools to add up all the offsets dynamically so you can see them. So there's some limits in place. And that's on the buy and the profit. Minutes for longer term trend. So profit trailer feeder has two different windows. It's got a trend window that it's trying to trade on, and then it's got a longer term trend window that it's trying to look at the overall state of things. So if you're looking at a 1 hour window and a price has gone like this, well, this 1 hour window, that looks great. Like it's gonna buy because it sees this downward movement in that little window. But overall, it's post pump. The price has gone way up and now it's on its way down. So if your window in the longer term trend is big enough to capture the whole profile, the flat line before and the spike and then the down, if it captures all that, you should be able to see that that's an anomalous price condition. And you'll say, well, I don't want to trade that. And that's essentially what this is. So you can set that window. So this is in minutes to look at a longer term window. And then you can also set your trend window. So this is for base coin trend, price trend change, and volatility calc. It's set to 60 minutes. You can set that to whatever you want, same as everything else. Also measured in minutes. Number of pairs is a restrictive factor. It's saying no matter what else is going on, only have this many pairs. Again, that's because it's hard to know. Maybe you want to make sure you've got everything else cranked up to the max, and then you use this as a restrictive factor to make sure you're only in so many pairs at a time, and you're not in 60 different ones with one DCA, as opposed to 6 or 7 that you can afford to DCA all the way down. All comes down to your strategy, guys. And there is a sell strategy. So obviously you can use different strategies to buy and to sell. You don't use the same for both. You can, or you can separate them. You might choose to exit a different way than you entered, and that's where you would set that. The sell value is a trigger for the sell strategy. The top currencies to check. This is what is looking. This is the number of top altcoins that we're looking at to measure trending from. You can set that to whatever you want as well. That sounds very redundant. I say that every time. Just from now on, you can do pretty much whatever you want with these numbers. But that's why we have sane defaults, because you got to start somewhere, right? All right, so let's talk about markets for a little bit. It is a core thing to what Profit Trailer Feeder does. So within every market, there are more offsets, and there is a market trigger condition. The simplest way to do it is to look at the max top coin average change. So you set that value up top, you set how many coins you're looking at, and then you're monitoring overall what their performance is. And if most of them are trending downward, we're in a bear or a super bear market. So in this case, the value is set at -2. So if the top coins you're looking at are 2% or worse, you're in Super Bear, and then it's going to apply these conditions. Some sane ones to use, like DCA-enabled false. Well, why would you do that? Well, you probably don't want to be DCAing in a market that's tanking. You want to wait for that market condition to change a little bit, signifying that you've hit a bottom and you're starting to climb out. So do whatever you want. You can change the trailing offsets. You might want to make those different. There's all kinds of different things you can do. We're going to go into all that in its own container video, but just understand that that's what markets do. You can actually disable those as well. You can't delete them all, but it needs at least a market to write the folder pairs to, and I'll show you here. So every time a market changes, an angel gets its wings. No, every time a market changes, it writes these files to Profit Trailer. So what a lot of people do is they change these values in each one to match the market conditions. Meaning, if you're in a super bear market, your DCA levels might be different than if you were in a boring market or a bull market. Same with your indicators and pairs. But anyway, just so you know that that's what markets do, and that's how they work. Just another set of offsets. Excuse me, offsets essentially. And there's several in here. We're going to get down to price grouping, which means this is another group that's saying, okay, if the coins are worth this much, do these offsets. You could do nothing. You may not care what a coin's price is. The inference here being that the more expensive a coin is, maybe the higher the higher value you would put on it. Whatever. You can group by volume. Again, same kind of concept. It's saying, look, if a coin is in a certain volume threshold or higher or lower, do something. If you think that coins that are the hot coins of the day, those tend to trade very well. They tend to oscillate. Well, I shouldn't say that. Just because it has high volume doesn't really mean much other than it has high volume. Something could be tanking and have high volume. But what it does mean is there's typically liquidity in the pair, which usually means it's good for trading, because things don't just go or, right? They go downstairs, they go upstairs, which is a good opportunity for you. And these are also in offsets. So between, if it's between 2 and 300 or 300 and 500, these different ones will apply. Price trend change. Yep, same kind of thing. So these offsets are looking at the same number of pairs that we had set in the beginning. And it's saying, well, if the trend is this much, or between, actually it's between these two. So it's between -0.3 and -5. If it's -5 or worse, do this. If it's between, it's going to be this level. So again, you can use these offsets to your advantage, that there's all these multiple conditions. Apply all of those per coin. So your output's going to be a whole bunch of coin pairs that all have their own offset conditions, and you trade on those. Maybe that's more complicated than you want. You might want to slim this down a little bit so you can start basic and add conditions as you go. These default configurations are just that. They're defaults. A lot of it's just to show you what you can do, not what you should do. Okay, if that makes any sense. So we got all those. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. So yeah, okay, here, Trug is telling you, look, that's probably not going to happen, but this is something to think about. You may want your, some crazy level to kick in if the markets are doing something and you're out, on your private boat and you're not watching what's going on. Okay, you can set these to do whatever you want. Oh, and these are also the short-term trends. So these are based off that 60-second variable we talked about earlier. These down here are the longer term. So this is saying if the coin long-term looks like this, looks like -5, -5 or worse, do this. Put it in sell-only mode, adjust my trailing offset, adjust my sell offset. If it's between, then you're in this group, and you're going to do this stuff. Okay? Again, he's just showing you that that's not a value you would use. But anyway, so hopefully that helped a little bit to go through all of those. I think next we need to start talking about some of the different strategies and some of how all that ties in. And then after that, we'll go back and talk about, after we get the strategies down, maybe we'll talk about when you change things, what else that affects. But that's it for those two files. That's enough to a little more explanation. Look, the wiki has way more in-depth explanation than I just did. But if you like to hear me talk and you want it fed to you that way, there you go. All right, on to the next one.